inflation is this awful lot, they don't even report the true inflation. We all feel it, the notion of it.
This is not a question mark.
Our hands are tied.
We know what this number is, Andy. Right now, we could get into how the Bureau of Labor and Statistics chair has no idea what she's doing because she doesn't even know her own numbers when she's interviewed by national media like Bloomberg. But let's just say for a minute that is a valid CPI number. How much do taxes need to go up next year in order to keep this all running the same? The answer. Now, what happens when we take that out to the public and say, we're really sorry, we've got to go up on your taxes 6.8%. They show up with the pitchforks and the torches and they explain to us how they're on fixed incomes and they can't manage them. So unfortunately,
Well, but,
there's two sides to this.
but it's not 6.8% of their total tax bill.
It is.
Of their
Yeah.
total tax bill with schools
The
included?
schools are in a struggle way worse than we are.
Well, no, I'm talking about just the village portion. Of
I'm
their
talking
tax
about the
bill.
village portion, and if we did that across, county government has got a multi-million-dollar shortfall right now they're trying to figure out how to deal with, and the sales tax coming up is a part of it. If you'll let me, we'll go just a minute more. We're talking about absolute funding, and I wanna talk about the core of Act 10 for a minute and why it was put in place. We can agree with it, not agree with it, whatever that is. The core of it was this idea that somehow there was inefficiency in the delivery of governmental services and that there was an inflated bureaucracy that somehow needed to be dealt with. And rather than heavy-handed, put in labor quotas or things of that nature, the administration at the time decided, hey, we're just gonna use inflation to our advantage to squeeze this down. If you compare Wisconsin nationally to the other states, Wisconsin has got the third highest level of government in the entire country. So it has, over the years, tended to be a more bureaucratic, bloated process relative to other states, particularly in the southern United States. So efficiency is one of the things that we looked at. And to the point, we looked at admin, we looked at DPW, we looked at policing, we looked at fire and EMS, we looked at our streets and our programs with our streets and DPW. And there's at least when I came in 7 years ago, a vast mismatch on who got funded and what. And I would describe for you very candidly, the funding mechanism was which department head is the most popular and which department head can put together the best presentation. And that's how the funding got allocated. I'm looking at Don to nod his head. That's how it was done, okay? So when I came in and Don came in, we went, no, we're gonna needs-based assess this top to bottom. And so we looked at FTE employees that were employed in the various departments, what the calls for service were. And this one, it's not a fun thing to bring up, but I gotta bring it up because it's real data. If you look at what Heather's got up on the sheet, the funding stayed more or less the same, and this is what we talked about in past presentations. I'm doing this for a living in your benefit. In 2017, funding of 290,048 all the way through 2021, and then we upped it a little bit in 2022 just to deal with some odds and ends. The county funding varies based on that circulation number, but if I look at circulation, what's the long-term trend? I did this for a 20-year look back. The 20-year look back is the circulations continue to drop for 20 years. The visits have continued to drop for 20 years. There's a little bit of variability. So if we look at it simply from a P admin standpoint, we're keeping the library doors open, and there are some things that switch around like digital checkouts and use of digital properties, which don't unfortunately show up in that calculation matrix for the circulation. They are part of the workload. The library has got less overall visitors, less circulation than it did 20 years ago, and that trend continues. Andy's brought this up on a number of occasions, having a background in the book industry. I think the unfortunate part of the conversation is libraries are a cultural icon in every community that they serve, and they do an amazing job with limited resources compared to many other communities. You happen to live in an overtly conservative community that all of our surveys says absolutely don't raise my taxes to fund the library. We asked in our last community survey question, would you be comfortable going out to referendum? It was roughly a third responded yes, and so a relatively low response rate for library funding.
And we
Heather.
prioritize emergency public service.
Yes, Heather, go for it.
Can I speak? Okay.
Sure.
So thank you, Zeke, for looking at the data and pointing out that trend. I would counteract that with all due respect. When we look at the data starting in 2024, we are seeing more visits with less checkouts, and even though we have less circulations, we have more people using using other resources in the library. I hesitate to even put circulation in there. Many libraries don't even put that in there because it's not really a true reflection of how many people use the libraries. We have people who come into our libraries who use the computers, who just use a variety of resources. For example, we just had someone come in the other day who was a Vietnam veteran who had taken out savings bonds, finally got a letter and needed help figuring out what his EE bonds were worth today. He didn't check anything out, but I think he would say, I had a valuable interaction at the library and it was worth it.
Let me just say this one, you do a phenomenal job. And unfortunately, we're both in these roles that we have to carry out, like, hey, here's the bigger fiscal picture, and your job's to go, hey, this is my fiscal picture and what it does. So I don't want to lose anything anywhere in translation. From my end, if we got rid of every metric except visits, literally just people that walk through the door, that is still a declining metric over the last 20 years of data for the Village of Waterford. During recession, right, we saw that number go up in the 2008 data, right, when people were seeking out those library services like you're talking about. It's rotten, and to Andy's point, inflation makes all of these decisions that much harder.
Okay, we are gonna kind of pick this up a little faster because of time, so, Tammy?
If I remember correctly, when Kevin came and spoke about our audit, he said that we had $36,000 that was still left for the library?
Yeah, that rolls over year to year. So that's in the budget for this. So the 36K of rollover, if you will, that we're presuming that goes unspent through the rest of the year, that's not going anywhere except within the library fund itself. And that's been true from a fiscal accounting standpoint going way back.
So does that mean that we start with 36,000 and not a zero line budget?
So let's just say for a minute that the library adhered to its budget in both revenue and expenses, and it spent every one of those line items down to the dime. It would mean that you're starting 2025 on page 3 with $36,171. If the library gets really tight, is able to defray costs, postpones outlays, then that number likely goes up. So the 36K is staying right there. It's not being reapportioned anywhere.
Okay.
Isn't that up,
I,
are you done?
Yes.
Isn't that up to the library board?
Yeah, so when I raised my hand originally, that was the point I was gonna talk on. You all really have one role, unfortunately, and I'm gonna say that I dropped the ball with this, which is you decide how much funding you get to give them. They get to decide how it's spent, efficiently, inefficiently, on whatever it is they wanna spend it on, and to do program level analysis of what they do or don't do, and then base your spending decision on that is gonna be a Sisyphean task that none of us are ever gonna prevail in.
Okay, so we're gonna just move on. I wanna thank everybody that spoke up. Lynn, do you have anything to say about any of this? Because I know you're new to the committee, is there anything?
I'm very new, and I am a frequent user of the library. I mean, there, every single week, I did the policy review for the insurance in one of your study rooms, so, I utilize your services and I have a great appreciation for it. And, I guess I'm just learning and I need to know more before I can make a full
Okay,
decision.
and I appreciate that because, I guess that's where I just wanna end this, part on is, we as a community need to decide the direction we're gonna go forward when it comes to our public library. We can look at circulation, we can look at why we cut 100,000 2 years ago, we can look at why we should give 25,000 more, 50,000, whatever that is. This group has to have that conversation. One thing I did learn that I never even really thought about, because I've had a very fortunate life that I didn't have to worry about some of these things. There are kids that is their spot to go wait for their parent to pick them up after school and have nowhere else to go. There are people who meet there because they have nowhere else to go. We are doing a disservice to our people in our community by continuing to cut this budget. If we don't change course eventually, we're not going to have a library. And I do not want to live in a community that does not have a library. I don't think many people do. Now, that goes back to what Zeke just said. This committee has some serious decisions to make and some serious conversations to have here pretty quickly. So, I am advocating, and I know I'm gonna get sides and eye rolls, and that's fine. I'm advocating for $25,000 to be increased in this budget, and we're gonna work at this as a committee and with Zeke to see how we can make that happen. And this committee needs to process that, digest that, and we're gonna come back and discuss this in the next week or two. That's what I want to see happen as the committee chair. Anybody else want to say anything on that before we quickly move on?
And we we able to push that HVAC?
I would not tackle any of the other budget sections. I actually
I,
spoke with Michelle at the outset, like, we're gonna be too short
I'm
of time to
sorry,
give
but
any
this
meaningful.
was
Yeah,
also-
no,
this was
this is good. It's good dialogue.
this, what other committees do we have where we have this turnout in the crowd?
Sure.
We should applaud that. This is citizen action in the making.
Or can we push back IVAC?
We can, this is a conversation going back to the other question you asked, we can discuss these things.
Push what back?
The
Yeah.
IVAC system.
We have
Oh,
a lot of issues.
HVAC, okay.
Yeah.
We have a lot of
Um,
issues.
Ask Mike about that.
It needs to be addressed, Andy.
You can't?
You can
Not
only spend
unless-
impact fees on
if
certain
we don't
stuff.
want heat this winter in our library,
Yeah.
then that's a conversation, but we need heat. Okay, so,
I
I
think
think we're
motion to
gonna just,
table.
yeah, we're gonna table this that's what I'm looking for, is to table this. We're gonna have more conversation as a committee and discuss that number.
Motion to table the library budget until the next finance committee meeting.
Second.
Okay, any more questions, concerns about that? All right, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Moving on to number 2, 2024 budget amendments and approval of a resolution 1021-101424 to amend the 2024 budget number 3 and consider an appropriate motion for action.
So this needs to go on the village board tonight. This is a cleanup of reconciliation between funds for our audit. We had an interfacilities fund, set up in 2023's budget. We consolidated it all into Fund 100 as part of the 24 budget. We would like to have consistency, and this is just to make sure that admin and treasury staff are clearly communicating with this committee, the village board, and the public about where the money comes from and where the money goes. This is completely consistent with the actions of, then sitting Chief Rick Mueller going back to 2019 when we began doing interfacilities transports. Good program management and follow-up means good fiscal tracking. If we're gonna maintain coverage in our community, the expectation has to be set and it has to be balanced with good fiscal management tools. So that's what this budget amendment does.
Any questions on this from anybody? All right, hearing none, I'm looking for an approval of this resolution.
I'll make the motion to move resolution 1021-101424 to amend 2024 budget number 3 to the full board.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Any other questions or comments or concerns on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Can we move item 3?
Yep.
If anybody's any
They're in the
questions
packet,
on
there
the
are
year-to-date
questions.
financials,
Yep.
contact myself, President Houston, Zeke, or
Michelle.
anybody,
Yep.
or Michelle. All right, then I'm looking for one more motion for the night for the committee.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'm sure there's no question about that, or, okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you all for coming.